Well, good evening. It's another time for PM Express, and we're grateful that you could make time with us as always. My name is Stephen Enti. Now, the 6th Parliament of the 4th Republic has just been inaugurated, and its leadership is duly in place to steer the affairs of the House. A new speaker has been elected, and the newly elected House is already active and in full swing. What does this actually mean? How much do you know of the parliamentary proceedings? Tonight we'll dig into all of those. Do we really understand the structure and functions of Parliament as an arm of government? And what lies ahead of them in this new government? And are they up to the task? How will the increased numbers from the 230 to the current 275 affect their job, really, the workings of the House, and by extension, the newly created constituencies? What about the logistics inadequacies and the congestion that they're currently facing, leading to the adjournment of the House for the next 2 weeks? Now, also earlier this evening, a statement signed by presidential spokesperson John Jinapor announced the appointments of 4 key positions in government: Chief of Staff, Secretary to Cabinet, Executive Secretary to the President, and Senior Policy Coordinator at the Office of the President. We'll be taking a look at these appointments and the men who have been called to duty. My name is Stephen Enti, and in the studio tonight I have with me Frederick Opariansa, who is Minority Chief Whip. He obviously has experience in parliamentary proceedings. He's also MP for Suhum. Later on in the show, we'll get on to the phone line to speak to Daniel Batidan, who is the Executive Director of APNAC Secretariat Parliamentary Centre. And then we'll speak to Dr. Evans Agre Dako, who is a political scientist. You can join us by text 1760. You can post your Facebook comments on our Facebook wall, facebook.com/joynewsontv or facebook.com/multiTV world. You can also follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter feed is Joy News on TV. Welcome, sir, to the studio.
Thank you very much.
New Parliament, does it mean new rules?
Well, not really. And before we go on, let me make a quick correction.
Yes.
I was the Chief Whip for the minority in the 5th Parliament.
In the 5th Parliament.
This current Parliament has Mr. Damboche as the Minority Chief Whip.
All right.
So just for the record, I
you.
am the member from Suhum.
Thank you.
But not necessarily new rules. As you probably know, the parliaments are regulated by our standing orders. And until a parliament comes in, the Constitution has granted every parliament the power to self-regulate. So far, we haven't seen any amendments, nothing major to the standing orders which the first parliament started off with. And so we have lived with the standing orders which we all inherit. In the last parliament, we attempted to actually amend the existing standing orders. We got somewhere halfway through, but we did not. And as you probably know, the standing orders of the House is an act of parliament. And so it has to go through quite a lengthy scrutiny.
What does it mean? I mean, if you say the standing orders of the House is an act of parliament, does it mean that Parliament cannot amend its own laws?
It can amend its own laws, but I'm saying that it is not like somebody just get up and say that we are changing this section or that section of the law. It has to go through the motions of amendment within the rules. But we have the power to amend our own rules.
I see.
But fortunately or unfortunately, this new parliament will be governed by the rules that governed the last parliament. Until, if need be, and if it found it necessary, the House could amend those rules. I am sure there are portions of the rules that after operation for about over 20 years now, we all agree that there are some ambiguities and some minor errors in certain places that need to be corrected. There are also certain areas which we all agree if we amended, it would greatly enhance the work that we are doing and put us in better stead.
I see. So for many of our viewers who do not have an understanding of the actual structure of parliaments, we watch on TV and we see, for me, I mean, if for the sake of the fact that I understand what goes on in parliament, I would have no clue about all the things that go on. Can you walk us through the typical structure of the Ghanaian parliament? What does it look like?
Well, the House has two broad sides to it: the membership and then the supporting staff. The entire institution, as you probably know, is headed by the Speaker of Parliament, who wields authority both in the chamber and over the entire presence of Parliament. He also chairs the Parliamentary Service Board as per the Parliamentary Service Act. And so he has enormous authority. You probably also would realize that he is the number 3
in line in succession.
And indeed, from the time that the Speaker was elected and sworn in, before the President and the Vice President were sworn in,
he was the acting president.
He was the acting president until about 10 a.m. Yesterday. And that is quite a significant role that he has to play. The rest of the House is structured into the caucuses. And for our Parliament, there are only 2 sides to the Parliament. If you look at our standing orders, there is the majority side, which is that party with the highest numerical strength. And then there is the minority side, which is the party or parties with the highest numerical strength, other than the party that has actually formed government. And so, broadly speaking, when we go into the chamber, those sitting generally towards the left side of the Speaker are those in the minority, and those generally towards the right are in majority. I say generally because we don't have an equal parity chamber. You still have some members from the majority side sitting towards the left.
I see.
Because we are not equal in number. When you go to certain other parliaments, like in the US, where people sit in relation to the Speaker does not signify whether they are majority or minority.
I see.
It signifies their thinking. Those sitting towards the right are those with right-thinking political leanings, and normally that will be the Republicans in the US. And those towards the left are those left-thinking, like the Democrats. And so whether they are in minority or majority, they sit exactly that way. And it is just the median which shifts and shows that these people are in majority or minority. But here, when our numbers change, we actually change where we sit within the chamber. Each side is led by a group of 5 members. And before then, the Speaker is actually assisted by 2 deputies, the first Deputy Speaker and the second Deputy Speaker. Currently, we have the Speaker in the person of the Right Honourable Do Ajaho, and then the first Deputy Speaker, the Honourable Barton Udru Ebo. Then the second Deputy Speaker, the Honourable Joe Gatti. Now, on the issue of the leadership of both sides, you have actually 5 members, starting from the leader with a deputy, and then a chief whip with 2 deputies. On the majority side, currently they have the Honourable Dr. Ben Kumbo as the majority leader, deputized by the Honourable Alfred Kwame Agbesi. The chief whip is in the person of Honourable Muntaka from Aswansi. His first deputy being Haji Abuforo. And then the second...
Chief whip, minority chief whip, what's the role? What's the role of the chief whips?
The whips are basically the managers of the caucus. You are responsible for determining who in your caucus serves on which committees, who sits where in the chamber, recommendations to the Speaker in terms of leaves of absence. You know, in our procedures, a breach of privilege if you should not come to work for 15 continuous sittings without permission and without stated reason. Then you can be actually sent to the Committee on Privileges and sanctions applied to you.
I see. And the sanctions might include you could lose your seat?
In serious and severe cases, that could happen. If you look at it, then it means that you basically have to get the permission of your chief whip to be able to travel or attend to constituency duties. It is also the role of the chief whip to manage and protect his caucus. You usually have issues coming up on members. We are human beings. Somebody is not happy with a member for some issue. They have to take it up with the chief whip, who can then call the member and say, oh, this matter has come up, and I think if we approach it this way or that way, we should be able to have an amicable solution with you and whoever is unhappy. And more often than not, these things happen in the back rooms and nobody gets to see it. The chief whip has also the very important role of ensuring that the caucuses are going in the line that the party is thinking. We all have our individual beliefs and preferences. But normally, when the party takes a decision, it is the duty of the chief whip to ensure that his members are conforming. Unless somebody feels very strongly on some matter, on, say, religious grounds or some serious conscientious matter, then they have to be made to toe the party line. And that is where the issue of whipping actually comes in. In that case, you have the first line whip, the second line whip, and the three-line whip.
I see. So when new members join, I mean, you have been you were in the last parliament, the 5th parliament, and I don't know whether it's fair to say you're privileged to be back in the 6th parliament, but you won elections. So if you won elections, free and fair elections, then it means that you have the right to come to parliament. But do new members go through some form of orientation for them to first understand the structure and workings of Parliament, and second, on how to conduct themselves through the parliamentary procedures of, moving a motion and debating and all the things that you do?
The first thing is that indeed it is always a privilege to have the opportunity to serve. This is the 3rd time the people of Suhum have done me this honor, and for that I'm very grateful to them. I'm sure there are lots of people who would prefer to be in my place, but this is what the people of Suhum have decided. Indeed, when you first come to Parliament, in the last Parliament, just before we exited, was serving on a committee, that is the Committee on Dissolution and the Inauguration. There's always, towards the end of the life of a Parliament, that committee is put in place to ensure the smooth transitioning from the old Parliament to the new Parliament.
Okay.
And one of the things we designed was a series of orientation and induction program for members. For instance, on the first day that members came in, and this has actually evolved. When we first got to Parliament, we did not have the opportunity for such a thing. And so when I got the opportunity to serve on the committee, I made sure that, together with the other members of the committee, to make sure that we now cure some of those little defects that existed in the system. On the first day, when members came in to get registered, they were then given a 1-hour tour of the presence of Parliament.
Okay.
Just to tell you that there is a post office here, there's a library here,
I see.
There's a clinic here, there is all kinds of facilities here. If you have to talk finance, this is where their offices are. If it is HR, they are located here. If you're looking for leadership, these are where their offices are. And then they took them to the chamber to give them a rough idea of what goes on in there and how to conduct themselves in there. There is going to be a proper induction workshop for all the members of Parliament.
But that has not been done yet for the 6th Parliament.
Is
there any time frame
hopefully
for which it must
in the
happen?
first week of
in the first week.
February.
I see.
That might happen.
So it means that by then, the new members may have sat through a couple of debates in the House and moved a couple of motions.
Precisely, and that is where the chief whips come in handy, because until that induction workshop is done for them, lots of people will come in and, one thing with Parliament are that you cannot find what we do in Parliament in any institution out of Parliament and study from there. I actually consult for the Interparliamentary Union, and I've had the opportunity of traveling to several parliaments outside to give them some lecture and briefings on parliamentary procedure and some other things, and the role of parliament in several aspects of national development and nation building. You can't find this in any classroom. And so most people, be they Form 4 leavers, secondary school leavers, first degree holders or professors, come into the chamber and clearly you can see that they are at a loss as to what to do and what is happening there. So everybody needs for their hand to be held and some tutoring happening. And in that situation, the whips are normally very, very useful because you have to rely on what your whips are guiding you to do. Former leaders, former whips, we all come on board to hold the hands of some of our new colleagues and guide them as to what to do. And beyond that, the induction that I mentioned is very, very critical. Very critical. That's very, very critical. Right. Because that is really where it is outside of the chamber setting, and there is time to really engage people with the know-how and in-depth insight into what we do there, to engage them one-on-one and get as much knowledge and information as possible. Okay, Honorable Frederick Opare, some former minority chief whip. I'll be grateful if you could speak a bit louder for us. I need to understand, as an MP, what do you do, really? Do you just get up in the morning and dress and wear your suit, and then just go to Parliament and take part in debates? Yeah, that shouldn't be a lot of work. Well, an MP has quite a number of very, very serious obligations lying on his shoulders. First of all, without parliamentary approval, the president and his executive arm of government cannot spend a pesewa of the country's money. And that is how it should be, because we represent the people. The people pay the taxes. The people cultivate the cocoa farms, who's about 30% of whose money ends up in the consolidated fund. The people, it's in their name that the oil is being mined, the gold, the timber, everything is in trust basically on behalf of the people. And so when all these monies get into the consolidated fund, it is only fair and proper that their representatives scrutinize that budget which the president and his team of ministers intend to execute. And that function by no means is not just a small function. It doesn't take wearing your suit and going there to represent. You have to do a lot of work to make sure that whatever budget you're passing is a good one. To what? I mean, work means that if there are bills, say there are budgets, you have to have copies and you have to have copies and apart from understanding the principles of the budget itself. Normally, for instance, you will look at, say, the policy initiatives of the government. Is this what the government, through its manifesto, told the people and they voted for them into office? Is that what they're doing? By the way, they may have said something on a political platform which, in quotes, did not make sense. Are they following it through with a budget simply because they said so on the political platform? Does it make sense expenditure-wise? So you have to scrutinize all these things and make your comment. And then you delve into the heads of estimates of the various MDAs, the ministries, departments, and agencies, to make sure that the programs and activities which they're proposing to undertake is indeed in line with the MTEF budget. There's a medium-term frame budget of the nation. And then currently we are running a 3-year shared growth, accelerated growth, something. Yeah, the GSGDA MTEF program is what we are running currently. So you have to relate the year-to-year budget to that MTEF program and make sure that the country is not moving away from its own plans. And these things are quite serious. Apart from that, we also exercise oversight over the executive. We make laws and give powers to the executive to do certain things on behalf of the nation. And we have to make sure they are not acting ultra-virus. They are not stepping out the bounds of the powers that we've conferred on them. And indeed, although we've authorized some expenditures or some appropriation for them, within the appropriation year, they must stay in line. They must not overstep all those bounds. And so oversighting is a very important function. The other very important function is the role of representation. I leave Suhum and come to Accra to represent the good people of Suhum. And so my voice must be seen to be heard every time there is an issue in this country that is before Parliament. The people of Suhum must have a say. They must be represented. Decisions must not be taken when the people of Suhum are not there. And so every morning when I wake up and wear my suit and go to the chamber,
I'm speaking for the people.
I'm speaking for the people of Suhum. I want to be sure that they are not shortchanged in any scheme of affairs. The other thing is the deliberative function of Parliament. We go in there, and instead of us taking guns and sticks and stones and meeting at, say, Kwame Nkrumah Circle
and fighting. You
jaw rather in the chamber. So there may be a matter that people are not happy about, and Parliament exists for us to be able to use it as a deliberative platform.
In the fifth Parliament, I quite remember one of the funny issues that came before the House was the approval of the 3 billion Chinese facility.
The CDB loan, yes, and also the STX housing project.
And the minority, you had your say, but you didn't have your way.
But ultimately, we were
what
proven
it
right.
always has.
Ultimately, we got proven right.
So, under that circumstance, when you debate things like that, and it does end at the end that you were right, what happens?
Well, that is why it is important that the platform of Parliament exists, for everybody to have their say, for those who can have their way to have their way. But posterity is there to judge us all as to whether the decisions that the Parliament took at the time it was right or wrong. They may not, at that material moment, be able to determine for themselves that the decision was right or wrong. But a few months down the line, events will turn up that will show the strength or weaknesses that decision had.
When we, for example, as a constituent, if I were a constituent of Suhum, for example, and it's time for re-election and you come to me, what would you tell me as being your achievements? Is it roads to show, or schools to show, or developments to show? Because I get the impression that several Ghanaians expect their MPs to be responsible for bringing stuff to their communities. Roads, toilet, markets, and when they don't see those things, they don't vote for you. Is that really what you're there to do?
Well, this is a very interesting subject. And for me, I always say that it's a fine line that one needs to thread. It only depends on how you communicate to and with your constituents. Because we are all faced with the same issues. People want good roads, they want water, they want electricity.
Decent health care.
They need good health care. They want the education system to be good. They don't want to hear you come to them and tell them that it is not your responsibility.
Or it is not possible.
Or it is not possible to deliver. By and large, it is the responsibility of the executive arm of government to deliver those services and facilities to the constituents. But it is also true that as a member of parliament, because day in and day out, you are in Accra, you serve as a development agent for your constituency. Who better to lobby for projects to go to their constituencies than that MP who is always in parliament and ministers of state whose duty and responsibility it is to execute those projects are walking around the corridors and lobbies of parliament. Fancy the situation where somebody comes from the right corner of the country, Boku or Binduri, and the people there need a road constructed. Should they wait for the chiefs or the DC who is holed out there some several 100 miles away from Accra to always come and chase projects, or it's easier for the MP who is here? So you can see that it's a matter of communication. Yes, it is not our primary responsibility to deliver those projects, but in a way we can facilitate the expeditious delivery of same to our constituencies. And that is where politics gets to be more of an art than a science. Because how do you accept responsibility for something that you have no control or authority over, and still let the people who are expecting this from you understand that you are only an agent? And that is where it really lies. So it is neither here nor there to say that MPs are not responsible for development projects in their constituencies. So who is? Indeed, the people, when they go to the polls, they go with a certain expectation. They go to vote because they are expecting something from
in return for the vote they cast.
They do understand clearly that they vote for two different people. And in my last campaign, it emerged. I was addressing a gathering at a place, and I said, but you voted for two people. You voted for the president, and you voted for me. Why are you not asking the president? Then somebody asked me, but where am I going to see the president? You are here. We see you all the time. So bring us that road. But it is okay. It is good because I think that is what is edging us on as members of parliament and making us always on our toes to be going, chasing after projects and that kind of thing. But we don't have to overstretch it to let it get to the point where it looks like it is the MP that is even given a budget to actually deliver those projects. If you go to some African countries, and not just Africa, and even in certain other jurisdictions outside of Africa, you would find that they have developed to the point of giving the MP's constituency development fund, which kind of consolidates all the little funds that are occasionally given to members of parliament so that they can properly plan and use them to deliver some projects to the constituents. The idea of the common fund, the component of common fund which is given to members of parliament, was to enable us respond quickly to emergency situations that exist or occur in our constituencies.
And many of that have been used to pay school fees for constituents and others.
They are emergency situations. If somebody cannot pay the school fees of a child and they send them home when it's about time to write the final exams,
that's an emergency.
It is certainly an emergency.
We'll take a quick break, Honourable. My name is Stephen Anti, and Honourable Fred Opariansa is MP for Suhum, is a Member of Parliament in the 6th Parliament. He was in the 5th Parliament as well. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll discuss the logistic constraints that bedevils Parliament on a daily basis. Now they have a new complex, Job 600. Welcome back to PM Express. I'm in a studio with Honourable Fred Opariansa, former Minority Chief Whip and MP for Suhum. We're discussing Parliament, where he's taking us through some education about the structure of Parliament. What MPs do. If you voted for your MP in Parliament, what are your expectations of him or her? And over the period that they've been in Parliament, have they met your expectations? You can send us your comments, your text, and your opinions and views by text, I beg your pardon, 1760, or you can post them on our Facebook walls, facebook.com/Joy News on TV. Now, later on the show, we'll also discuss the appointments that have been made by the President. 4 key appointments have been announced. The government has, the President has appointed the Chief of Staff, the Secretary to Cabinet, Executive Secretary to the President. So when we look at these appointments and the men that are occupying this position, what do they bring to the table? And is this an indication of the governance direction of John Mahama? Don't forget that President John Mahama took over the reins from John Mills, whose style of governance was different and had a new set of ministers in place. There were times in his rule that these appointees were described at A and B, and so we want to find out really whether these appointments will reflect the President's orientation and governance style. So you can stay with us. So, Honourable, let's talk about the Parliament. What tools do you need as an MP to work effectively?
Well, first of all, you're a Member of Parliament. you would have ordinarily needed to have at least an office in Accra to work from. Over 20 years now, no member of parliament, save for those in leadership, have had any offices on the presence of parliament. You would come and find members working out of their car booths, at the foyer, yes, on their laps. When you say on laptops, it sounds more like they're actually working from computer laptops, but on their laps around the lobbies in parliament and the like. Again, when you go to our constituencies, most of us work from our homes in the constituencies, and there are a few lucky ones who have managed to secure some shop and then convert it into an office space within the constituency to receive visitors and the like. Currently, as you may be aware, the Job 600 building is in the final stages of being completed. It's being converted into office accommodation for members of parliament. There is just a slight hitch. At the time that was being done, the number of members of parliament was only at 230, and currently we are sitting at 275. With stretching every resource in there, we'll probably be able to accommodate about 252.
I see.
That's office to office, and so there is still a shortfall of about 23. The other is also to have a proper working space within the chamber itself. There are plans to do some reconfiguration there. As we speak today, I know there are about 235 microphones that can operate in the chamber. We've done some infilling with chairs to accommodate all the 275 members of parliament, but we are short of 40 microphones.
Wow.
And so hopefully, after the recess on Friday, by the time we return sometime later this month or early next month,
that would have been fixed.
That would have been fixed. So we need very good working spaces to work properly. When you don't have an office in the constituency, sometimes it's quite tiring. When I was chief whip, I used to get to my constituency very late Friday night because I have all kinds of things to do and go home in Accra and then get ready and go to the constituency. So you arrive in the constituency 2 a.m., 3 a.m. When people come to your house by 6 a.m., 7, and people tell them you are sleeping, politically in itself, it's a problem. Oh, I went to his house and they told me he's sleeping, and it doesn't sound right.
They can't get it.
They can't get it that you arrived around 3 a.m., 4 a.m. But if you had an office, you would have staff there, and people who meet your absence would easily leave messages and take their own messages also from them, and they can go back to their homes happily. And so it's very important that members of parliament get office accommodation both in Accra and in the constituencies. We also need vehicles to work. It is quite interesting to note that in the three arms of government in this country, the executive gets state-purchased, state-fueled, state-chauffeured, and state-secured vehicles. They come, you see a police bodyguard sitting in the car. This is the state that maintains the vehicle, buys fuel in it. The driver is paid by state, and they use it to work for the state. When you go to the judiciary,
it's the same.
The same thing. The executive members, apart from the president, the rest of them are just appointees of the president. And that is what they give them to work for the president and the nation. The judges in the judiciary are people who have gone to school, and of course they are working for the nation, but nobody elected them. If you go to the US, in certain states and in certain positions, they actually elect the judges to office. Yeah. But here, they are not elected. They are all appointed. Now, when you come to the members of parliament who have gone through elections to come and represent their people, the practice here is to go and take a car loan and then use that car loan. You maintain you use a car loan to buy a car, you maintain that vehicle yourself, you hire a driver to drive and you pay him, you fuel it yourself, If you need security, you get one yourself and pay them. And then you use all those facilities to work for the state. And as if that is not enough, when the issue comes up that members of parliament are going to take car loans, then it raises a huge debate. There's furore about it across the whole country. Some of us have said that, why don't we simplify it? And just like the two arms of government, let government buy us those vehicles to work. After all,
when you're leaving office, you leave it behind.
We leave it behind. After all, we will use these vehicles for 4 years. People think people buy the vehicles because of luxury. I tell you, if you look at some of those V8 Land Cruisers, which have been on the road for just 4 years, imagine somebody whose constituency is in, say, Navrongo Central. Every time he travels from here to the constituency and back, that is almost 2,000 kilometers of journey. Just going to the constituency once and coming back. Take out the rounds in the constituency, the rounds in Accra. For some of them, in a year, they do between 50 to 60,000. So by the time the 4 years is over, the vehicle is done over 200,000 kilometers. And it is not just the mileage on the engine. It is even the condition. You take a vehicle to the constituency, everybody wants to join in it. The MP is here, he's going here, people are hopping on board, and so it becomes the people's vehicle. So for some of us, our position is that let government buy us those vehicles. Let us work with them, and after 4 years,
leave them behind.
Leave them behind.
This affects your effectiveness, right?
It certainly does.
On the job.
Now, the other side where we don't look at is this. If a minister of state dies, it is a great loss to the family and friends. It is a great loss to the country. But it doesn't cost us very much to appoint a new one. It takes a statement from the president's office, and then the sitting of the appointments committee, tabling a recommendation or report in the chamber, plenary debates, and a new man is in office. Let one member of parliament die. Look at the cost on the electoral commission to organize a by-election. Look at the cost of campaigning, especially if it is a constituency where both parties feel that they can win the seat. You would immediately see there is a lot of cost on the nation. And so one would have thought that we would have seen all these things by now to want to secure our members of parliament better than we currently do. Because we seem to put more emphasis on the security and the working conditions of the executive, who, sorry to say, but doesn't cost much to appoint and replace them.
Right, Honorable, I'll take a quick break from you and go on to the phone lines. I'm told Dr. Evans Agre Dako, a political scientist, is on the line now. Good evening, sir, and thanks for your time on PM Express.
Yeah, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, sir. Now, we'll shift the discussion. We're discussing Parliament and taking lessons about the structure of Parliament in governance in Ghana. And then also we're looking at the appointments that were announced by the President earlier today. I'll quickly read through some of that, and then we'll start our discussion. The Chief of Staff of the Presidency has been given to Mr. Prosper Douglas Kwekubani, and then Secretary to Cabinet is Roger Kwesi Angusonwene, and then Executive Secretary to the President is Raymond Atuguba. Senior Policy Coordinator at the Office of the President is Dr. Sule Garba. I don't know how much you know these individuals, but let's start from Dr. Sule Garba, for example. His appointment as Policy Coordinator at the Office of the President.
You realize that Garba comes across as a very competent individual. Somebody with very solid academic credentials. In governance, one of the key things that we must be interested in is how we marry men of thought and men of action. And so he really symbolizes this particular synergy that I'm talking about. He's somebody, a think tank, somebody who really has been in the area of policy, issues of governance, and so on. Don't forget that he's executive secretary or executive director of the Center for Policy Alternatives, alternatives in which is based in Tamale and so on. He has been in the thick of affairs. If you look at the 2008 transitional team, I think he was in there, and of course the current dispensation, he's played a key role even in the run-up to the elections and so on. He comes across, as I indicated, as somebody who really will bring a lot of experiences to bear on the policy issues.
Yeah, but Doc, the question I want to ask is that he has such rich experience that everybody knows, Dr. Sule Gariba. We've had a lot of interviews with him on our set about policy direction, etc. But this is President Mahama's first appointment. Is this an indication of how serious, for example, he will take policy in his administration?
You reckon that when it comes to policy issues, you cannot play it's not a child's play. You really need to know that you have filled in some individuals who have the competencies. If you're looking at a coordinator, I don't really know. We are yet to know his remit and the areas where he's going to operate. But the name, the designation coordinator presupposes that he's going to coordinate a number of policy issues and so on and so forth. Now, if you want to get somebody who is going to coordinate, and you coordinate very well, then you need a very competent individual who can then see the synergy between the various dimensions of the policy that you are seeking to implement, so that we don't have turf wars, and the policies must all gear towards the realization of the vision that the leader has and so on. So you need a very competent person, and I think that he really fits the bill, really. It's also indicative of the fact that the president will take policy seriously. Basically, the daily affairs, the day-to-day administration and governance, processes is about policy, and it cuts across various dimensions. And so if we are going to have policy slippages and you're going to engage in a lot of trial and errors, then there is a tendency that you are not going to fulfill the campaign promises.
Right, Doc.
And so you've got to be serious.
Yeah, Doc. And then Dr. Raymond Atuguba, I mean, he is a senior law lecturer and has worked in several positions, over 50 committees. He has actually been appointed as executive secretary to the president. What does this tell you also?
Yeah, you see that Raymond also as a young academic, somebody who knows what he's doing. He's quite very diligent and meticulous. If you look at the last role that he played in the Constitutional Review Commission as a secretary there, he distinguished himself creditably. He's a very likable individual, very, very humble, but then very firm and knows what he's doing. Also, with somebody who has a solid academic credentials and has also seen some element of practice. As you look at it, he's been a very competent lawyer, winning some very important cases and so on. He can reach across the aisle, for instance, and relate very well to all segments of the population and so on. So even though it's not steeped into serious party politicking, you are also very much interested in getting somebody out there, because increasingly our society is becoming sophisticated. Policies are going to be extremely contested. You agree with me that increasingly the average Ghanaian is looking for value for money, and therefore the era of mediocrity and those things, amateurism, must give way to professionalism and competence among others.
Right.
So you are very, very much conscious of these dynamics, and
right,
you want to really satisfy the key constituencies within this country and so on. So
right.
That is why I consider these appointments as significant.
Right, Doc.
I don't know too much about the background of the two other individuals.
Right, Doc. There's one last question I would like to ask you, and maybe briefly you can wrap it up for us. There are those who argue that the president is beginning to surround himself with his own people. I mean, Dr. Sule Garba is of Northern extraction, Raymond Atoguba is, and Roger Azonwene sounds like one. Do you foresee this as politically from where you stand? Is this a problem? Or is it just that the president must surround himself with people and potentials he feels comfortable in, whether or not they're from the north or not?
It's still too early in the day for us to draw that valid conclusion. Yes, I know that he has a number of appointments up the line or down the line. So one would not be fair in concluding that these will constitute a very potent grounds to argue that he surrounded himself with northern extraction, people of northern extraction. What I am interested in is whether indeed the people he is assembling have the capacity and the competencies to be able to deliver on the promises that the president has given us. And so I believe strongly that other considerations will come in. Of course, issues of regional balance will weigh heavily on him. Issues of, the gender balance, going by the semblance model among others will come in. His own party constituencies, the call that he should be able to bridge the divide and maybe reach across the other political, divide to bring in other competent individuals to help in the governance processes and so on. So
right.
I believe that it's too early in the day for us to draw that conclusion. But I think that he will definitely be mindful of the danger associated with maybe surrounding yourself with all your colleagues and whether that portends for the unity of your party among others. So I believe he's very conscious of that and will not take us down that line.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Evans Agri-Darko is a political scientist, and we're very grateful for your time. So quickly back into the studio, Honorable Opariansa. Parliament, I won't go. We cannot wrap this program up without talking about what appeared in Parliament today to be a controversy of whether the MPs really boycotted President Mahama's inauguration or not. Technically, you didn't boycott, right?
Well, anytime there is, for instance, a walkout in Parliament, from the last Parliament, the Speaker ruled that if the leader did not actually get up and say that we are walking out, and we just walk out, she wouldn't interpret it to mean that there was a walkout. Even that there was an argument when everybody saw us physically walking out on one occasion. The records of Parliament is clear that we were present to be sworn in. And then at a point, the records also indicate that there was suspension of the House and the House reconvened at the Independence Square at 10 a.m. I am sure it is no secret that our party had taken a decision that the party will not attend the inauguration. As Honorable Harina Idrisu put it this morning, we were legally present, but we were physically absent.
Exactly. So that's what it is.
Because if you go to the records as it were, it looks like we were in Parliament. But as to whether we were physically present at the time, it is obvious that from our party's position and the statement that we put out earlier, we were not present.
It must be very difficult to be in the minority in Parliament, considering that really, technically, a lot of the things you say is not taking.
Well, I'm sure you are familiar with the popular phrase of what you are saying is right, but just because you are in the minority, we won't take it. I don't know if you are familiar with that from somewhere in the first or second, I think it was the first Parliament of the First Republic. But the fact is what I said earlier, the representation, participation, and deliberation. It is important that no matter how people feel, wherever they stand politically, they are given the opportunity to air their views, to have their say. Even if the majority will have their way, it is important in a democratic dispensation
for the minority to have its say.
The minority to have its say. Just as I said earlier, it is always possible that after the minority have had its say and the majority has its way, posterity will judge that indeed, if they had gone the path of the minority, it would have been better for the nation.
Are you hoping that the minority will still be the minority and then the executive position will swap to the MPP's candidate, Nana Akufo-Addo?
Well, we are not just hoping. This is more than hope.
You are certain by the evidence you provided to the Supreme Court.
Precisely. And when you also add
That's going to be a novelty parliament for an executive with a minority.
If you bear in mind the fact that there are also ongoing cases which we filed concerning a number of the parliamentary seats, it is also possible that by the time the Supreme Court declares Nana Addo Akufo-Addo,
your numbers in Parliament would have increased.
Numbers in Parliament would have also changed from minority.
Well, we wish you the best.
Majority.
And this is PM Express, and I'm very grateful for Freddie Koparansa, MP for Suhum and former Minority Chief Whip. Earlier, we were joined on the phone line by Dr. Evans Agre Dako, who is a political scientist. We were unable to reach Daniel Batterton, who was supposed to join us to discuss some of the issues of parliamentary procedure. My name is Stephen Anti, and thanks for making time with us. Join us again tomorrow for another edition.